So you just received that first paycheck and you're probably wondering, what on earth do I do with all of that money? But never fear, in this video, I'm going to be giving you 3 simple tips for how you can use that money to set yourself up for financial success. I'm Kieran, Panchal, and on this channel, I help you navigate the crazy decade that is your 20s. So if you're trying to figure out life just like me, consider subscribing and joining me on this journey. But let's jump into it. So the first thing to do before you even think about how to spend your money is to inspect what you expect. Now, what I mean by that is looking at your payslip, figuring out if the money you've actually received lines up with what you expected to have been paid by your company for that year. So we're going to have a look at an example payslip here in the UK. American ones and other countries may look different, but in the UK, broadly, they look exactly like this. So you see your pay, your net pay, which is basically your yearly salary divided by 12 on the left-hand side. And then you see your deductions on the right-hand side. So your income tax, any pension contributions you have, any student loan, if you're starting to pay that back, if you reached over a certain threshold, which I think is £21,000 here in the UK. And then at the bottom, then you see your gross pay, which is actually how much money you take home and it ends up in your bank account. So it's super important to just check this out. You don't need to necessarily check it out after each month, but particularly for your first one, go check it out. Just make sure it's what you expect and always go speak to your HR department or your payroll department if you have any questions. Step 1 is fairly simple and one I'm sure you guys have heard of many times before, and that is to pay yourself first. Now, this concept comes from a book called The Richest Man in Babylon, where they talk about how you should save 10% of your monthly income to yourself before you think about paying any of your liabilities. Now, I'm not so fussed about the amount, it's more about the principle and habit you get into of paying yourself first that I think is the most important bit. To give you guys my example, I'm brown, I lived in a brown household, and I was fortunate to move back home after finishing university, and that put me in a great position where I was actually able to save 50% of my monthly income into my pay yourself first fund without ever having to blink or think twice about it. And that really put me in a fantastic position as I continued to work, and as the years went on, that put me in a position to buy a place, invest in other stuff, etc., etc. Now, obviously, what you do with that money is a whole different aspect. And if you guys want me to do a video about how I manage my savings and investments, let me know in the comments down below. I'd be happy to share my advice with you guys. But that first step really is just about getting into the habit of paying yourself first. Step 2 is one that you guys probably didn't expect me to have on this list, and that is to go out and buy yourself something nice. Financial management isn't about not having fun, it's just about spending money on the things that you enjoy. And so I encourage you guys, with your first paycheck, go out and buy something nice. We read so much about how we're in a world now where we just want instant gratification, and delayed gratification is just out of our vocabulary. And I completely get it. I'm in that situation too. I decided that when I got my first paycheck, I was gonna buy myself a Louis Vuitton bag. Now, looking 7 or 8 years later after I got my first paycheck, probably wasn't the smartest idea, but nevertheless, at that time, it was something, for me at least, that I was able to put down and was something material that I could say and point towards, and you go, you know what, that was a result of all of my hard work. And I encourage you guys to do the same, because you're going to want to do that, right? You are just going to want to do that. So go out and do it. Don't restrain yourself that much. The only word of caution I would give to you is to avoid getting yourself into something where you're going to be continuously paying. So a great example is cars and car payments. The problem with that is, yes, you might be able to afford a deposit and that will be your first paycheck or part of your first paycheck. But the problem is you're then trapped into monthly payments of £400, £500, £600, depending on whatever car you get. And that's essentially when we start getting trapped in jobs and feeling that you can't move, and you start to build a lifestyle around that salary, which means that if things ever change in your life, things become very difficult. So go out there, buy something nice, but just be careful about not getting yourself tied up into a long-term commitment. Step 3 is very much about budgeting and setting limits. Now, I personally don't really like the words budgeting and limiting because it just personally feels really restrictive. Budgeting and limiting, what it really is about making sure that you're allocating money for the things that you enjoy. Now, it's okay if you want to spend £100 a month on Amazon, Netflix, Disney, whatever, that's okay, but you're in control of spending that money and you're making a conscious decision to spend those money. Now, it's easy to get caught up into the world of, oh, I've got my first paycheck, I must start saving for a house, I must start saving for a wedding, I must start saving for a car. And yes, it's important to save towards those things, but don't do that at the expense of not having fun, because you're just honestly going to resent yourself and resent your life, and that's just going to eternally make you unhappy. So this is not what it's all about. It's just about being in control and conscious of what you're spending your money on, and deciding as time goes, Maybe I want to take a little bit of money out of there and put a little bit more money in there because that's what I now enjoy, and that's fine. It's just about being really conscious about where you're putting your money. So now after you've been earning for a couple of months, you start to get a better understanding of the amount of income you're making and what your kind of rough expenditure is, what you enjoy spending your money on, what you resent spending your money on. And then you start to get a bit more control and a bit better understanding. And when we get a couple of months into, at least 6 months into earning your salary at your first job, then it's important to start thinking about which liabilities you want to start paying off first. If you have an overdraft, if you have student loan, which one is important to think about. But don't worry about that on your first paycheck. That stuff is all stuff to come down the line. Don't get too caught up on that. What I would say is be sensible, but have some fun. And I think those are probably life lessons we should all take, but they definitely apply to when you have your first paycheck. So I hope you guys enjoyed this one. Let me know what you did with your first paycheck down in the comments below. I'd love to hear. And thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.